You're listening to The Sports Fix.
Portions of The Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all day or all week to get in on the fun. The party doesn't stop when we go off the air all week long. The Sports Fix social media sites are your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Jump over to Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, and become a fan today because we love fans and they create some of the best sports talk in town, Daddy. You'll enjoy talking to your fellow Cleveland sports fans on the Sports Fix fan page. And if Twitter's your thing, well, you know how we do it. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. It's that simple. Twitter.com/TheSportsFixCLE, baby. Chat live with the crew during all your favorite Cleveland sports events, tickets and contests and trivia and so much more. Get with us today, The Sports Fix on social media. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. Join The Sports Fix on Facebook and Twitter today.
Hi, I'm Hector Marinero. You're listening to The Sports Fix.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Good afternoon, or perhaps good evening, perhaps good morning. Depends on where you're enjoying the show, no matter where, no matter when. Welcome in, you guys. Thank you for joining us. The Sports Fix off and running and on the air here another Wednesday. There it is in the chat room, Huuump Daaaay, baby. And, of course, here on the Sports Fix, we try to help you blast through the middle of the week and get you heading downhill. Get the ball rolling downhill a little bit towards the weekend here. Let's do that like we do it. If you thought, hey, for some people probably tuning in at the beginning of the show, I don't know if you came here thinking that I'm going to rant and rave and I'm going to tear down the Indians and all that. You got the wrong cat. I'm not, hey, missed opportunities, yeah, we can talk about that. And you never take for granted that you're going to get the same pitching and the same windows and the same openings. You never know. Every year is an entity unto its own. But I'm not going to sit here and just rail and blast against the Indians because they, well, you know what? It's not, okay, I'll get this out of the way now. Let me get my ridiculous statement of the way out of the way. It's not technically over. That is my absolutely ridiculous statement of the day. I'm just going to say that first. I mean, technically, if the Indians win the last 4 games and the Royals lose their last 5 games, then they would tie for the wild card and then would have a 1-game playoff. Hey, I told you, I saw the 1-game playoff. No, look, I mean, you're against the odds that are against the odds at this point, man. I mean, more power to you. Go out there, win some games. If that unlikely set of circumstances works out, then you really can't. Somebody better slap Team of Destiny on a t-shirt and make some money off of that, because then you've really got some destiny to talk about. But, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and, throw confetti in the air and go, yay. But at the same time, I was telling some people earlier, and we will get into this here in a moment. I'm going to open up the phone lines. I know you guys got a lot to say. Man, what's up with some of you guys are in my head. This is scary. This is like that being John Malkovich thing. I was about to say, back-to-back winning seasons for the first time in over a decade, in nearly 15 years. I mean, that is a long stretch to go. I've been saying to people for the last few days, but even this morning, talking to some of you guys off the air, I said, okay, I understand that, you look at this season and you go, what could have been? And I can go through some other things, what could have been some bad ways too, with the way things went down this season, and we'll go down that road. But you don't get to having 3 and 4 and 5 consecutive winning seasons and playoff opportunities without going from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. I mean, I understand the immediate frustration by some people. I mean, last night, and here I go again. I'm trying not to just do this whole blasting on, bad fans on Twitter thing, but you'd have thought that the Indians lost 100 games last night looking at quote-unquote Indians Twitter and Indians fans and the way they were talking about the team. I get your frustration. I do. I totally understand. I'm not saying that you sit here and go, yay, the Indians won 82 games. I'm not telling you that that's a cause for celebration, but it's not the opposite either. You don't go down the deep end the opposite way either, man. I mean, especially to me, we talked yesterday about some of the people blaming Terry Francona for all of this. I mean, there are not just fans. There's people on the airwaves. There's people on television and radio in the last 24 hours. Quickly now, that seems to be a hot bandwagon to try to jump on is how much of this do you blame Terry Francona? Come on, man. I mean, I know, hey, man, somebody will find a way to blame the whole thing on him. I've already seen some of those excuses. I, as you guys know, am in the opposite camp. I definitely don't think he didn't make mistakes at times this year. I've made my thoughts on that pretty open, that to me, it's like the difference between seeing 150 at-bats in a season and 500. You're going to strike out twice as many times when you see 500 because you're getting more opportunities. You're going to commit more errors when you get more opportunities in the field, but you're also going to make more plays. You're going to make more things happen. I think that this year compared to last year was better for Francona because he was dealt more ground ball. He fielded 3 times as many grounders this year. So yeah, he may have booted a ball or two here or there through the season, but it's because he was fielding 3 times as many balls as he did the year before. The volume of problems that he was hit with compared to the mistakes and or non-mistakes that he made is staggering, but yet people don't see it that way. People don't look at it the way I just said it. They just look at it like, oh man, Terry Francona made a bunch of mistakes. I will say that you could probably nitpick and say that he made more managing mistakes than he did last year. Yet I still say he did a better job than he did last year because, as I said, he fielded 3 times as many problems. That makes a huge difference. I'm trying to think of like just numbers. It's like if you field 10 grounders and you commit 1 or 2 errors, you field 50 of them, you commit 10 errors. You go, wow, he committed 10 errors. Nobody looks at, well, but he fielded 40 more ground balls than he did before. So actually he did better percentage-wise than he did the year before, but they don't see that. They just see the big number attached to it. And that's the way I choose to look at the job that Terry Francona did this season. But, I mean, again, getting back to the way some people looked at and described and talk about things last night, and I understand the raw nerves, the frustration, especially when you look at the pitching in the second half of the season. And really, the last 3 or 4 months of it, as things came together too little too late. You can look at the slow start. You can look at, going over 6 on that road trip early on and being 6-7 games behind 500 and working your way back. You can talk about individual guys who had problems, but looking at this season as a whole, and I'm sure some of you have got the same opinions, it's miraculous for the Indians to have, it's a double-edged sword. I said that the other day. Miraculous in some ways that they are still where they're at and got to this point when you're just giving ball games away throughout May and June and committing errors and just throwing, and guys aren't hitting and then pitchers aren't pitching and nobody's ever all going good at the same time. Yet on the flip side, when it all came together, it looked so good at times that you go, man, if that's the team that you could have been all year, then man, that's a missed opportunity. And I think it's both. I think the Indians are both. Like we said yesterday, I said I liked it. Mike Pettin said if you took a cut up of the Browns, you could do it one group of footage and think they're the best team in the world. You could do another one and think they couldn't beat a high school team. Same thing here. You could look at the season from both sides of the knife there and see it. And I mean, I think we all know, look at we talked to some of the problems, clearing out some of the pieces that needed to move out of the way because they just weren't contributing, and the number of gaping holes that didn't contribute for this team. And yeah, there is some onus on the front office now to go out there and get an offensive producing bat. Go out there and retool the best you can. Hey, they've got some bad contracts to work with this offseason, but now the onus is on you not to sit back and say, hey, we're going to bring basically the same team back again next year because it's going to have the same shortcomings. But you do have the base of a team here that if you added a piece or two, I think we all can see it. And that is a place for frustration this winter if a few things aren't addressed. And that's one of the reasons that people get on the front office. I've got a kind of 50-50 look at the front office, because I understand the people that get mad at the budget limitations. And we know about the Dolans. We've had that conversation before. I know people that get mad at that. I know people that get mad at the constraints that the front office is under. Some people don't like the people that they bring in, and they don't. So let me tell you, when you're doing, and this is kind of a byproduct of Moneyball, low budget, putting a roster together anyway, but when you hit and miss, when you hit, they're great, but when you miss, they're pretty bad. And as we've seen, we've got some examples of some misses here, and that's going to happen. But when you're the smaller your budget, the more of those guys you bring on board, as we've seen. We see, I'm not even going to name names. You guys know the guys that we're talking about here. So, but at the flip side too, this, same front office made trade. I mean, look at some of the guys that you guys now hang your hat on that, as Indians fans, for not just today, but for the next few years. Yan Gomes and Trevor Bauer and Corey Kluber and, Carlos Carrasco finally with his emergence here after the last few seasons. But I mean, and we can add more names to that. These are guys that were all relatively unknown / unheralded people that were brought in various trades. So at the same time, and trust me, I can so quickly jump on the Dolans are cheap and blah, blah, blah. I can do that too. And in some regards, there's truth there. Not as many as some people would like to say either. I've often said the Dolans are a tainted brand. Like, if you're into corporate branding, I've said, man, if the Dolans could just pretend that they sold the team and just put somebody else as the front man, tickets would go up 20% in ticket sales next year, just because the name Dolans is tainted amongst Indians fans for good reasons and for bad reasons, for media exaggerations and for truths that have been out there. So for all of those reasons, it's a tainted brand. I've often said that I think that that's a piece of the problem, whether my 20% estimate is right or not. I'm 100% positive there would be an uptick. That's not to say that they've got to go or that the front office has got to go, because again, when I start looking at the front office's mistakes, then I balance that off by looking at some of the gems. I mean, that they've pulled off, particularly in trades. I mean, clearly this front office works better in the trade market than they do in the free agency market. I think we've seen that here. And that's, part of that is the economics and the byproduct of that in baseball too. There's a lot of different things, and I'm opening the floor to you guys here as we kick off the show. Feel free to join in on the conversation. We'll roll with this for a little bit. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fans going to be on with us later. We'll talk some Tribe with him, as well as Buckeyes, as we look ahead to the Buckeyes back on the field taking on Cincinnati. John McMullen from the Sports Network, he'll be with us in a little bit. We'll talk some NFL with him, the latest going on, his thoughts on the Browns at the bye. But we're talking Tribe right now, and I've thrown a lot out there at you. It's kind of where I'm looking at the status of the team right here. It's a team that in a lot of ways, you look at the missed opportunity, but in a lot of ways too, it's a team to be proud of, because this team, and I can point back simply to a very similar team a few years ago under Manny Acta in a very similar place down the stretch. The trade deadline comes and goes. Nothing happens. They pack in their tent and they give you 2 months of the worst baseball you've ever seen in your life. Stuff that was not even worth paying the price of admission for. This year, instead, they gave you a run, they gave you a ride, and they really gave you something to be into through, what is this now, 158 games of the season here. So keep that in mind as you look at it. Of course, this winter, it's key for the Indians, because I think we can all feel they've got the core of something that can compete in baseball for the not just next year, but the next few years. It's right there. It really is right there. So with that, let's open up the show. Sports Fix, welcome in to the Sports Fix. J-Rock with you guys here. Wow, a little bit of a roll there to open things up, but I had a lot on my chest, and I didn't want to rant against bad fans and good fans. I didn't want to make it sound like we're throwing a party, but at the same time, we're not having a funeral here either. So welcome in, you guys. J-Rock, Jerry Myers with you here every day. Noon, we kick it off across the Sports Fix Radio Network, live on TuneIn and TuneIn's radio app worldwide. on Spreaker and Mixlr, mixlr.com. And by the way, there's a nifty chat room over there on Mixlr that you guys can join.